year is 1933. First Baptist Church is pastored by the Reverend C. Rushing. Adolf Hitler's been appointed as Chancellor in Germany. He gives his proclamation to the German people. The Nazi Party is flexing its muscle against its own countrymen, and those of us here in the United States don't care. We've got our own problems. We're right in the midst of the Great Depression, which started with the stock market crash in 1929 and lasted to the late 30s. Some folks say into 1940. However, we have reassurance we have reassurance in the form of our newly elected president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. With his Happy Days campaign, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, commonly known as FDR, you look good, has just been elected as president for the first of 4 terms. He will serve in the Oval Office longer than any other president. He's the right man at the right time. Although suffering from polio, he provides a steel backbone that we need to persevere during this low point in our American history. Now in 1934, we're still hurting, but we feel better about ourselves thanks to the warm promise of Mr. Roosevelt and his fireside chats, which we gather around the radio eagerly to listen to. Now, as part of his New Deal program, the Public Works Administration, the Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, are created. And these means jobs, many jobs for over 500,000 young men who build bridges, dams, schools, and other rural projects. Then kaboom! The first of 3 waves of dust storms hit the Midwest, causing severe drought and erosion. It will reoccur in 1936 and again in 1939. The Dust Bowl would affect over 100 million acres and force tens of thousands of families to abandon their homes because they can't raise a crop to pay the mortgage. They called them Okies because most of them came from Oklahoma, but they came from other places as well: Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, Texas, Colorado, New Mexico. They migrated mostly to California, although they went to other places, only to find that the economic condition there was a little better. The Dust Bowl Exodus was the greatest migration in our American history. In 1939, Germany invades Poland and starts World War II. We remain neutral, although we do supply Allied forces with arms and munitions through the Lend-Lease Act. Then just before Christmas in 1941, the Japanese decide for us when they conduct a sneak early morning attack on our base in Pearl Harbor.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
We no longer have a choice. We're in the war. Again, we send our military men and women overseas to fight in a world war. Meanwhile, back at home, the men are going off to war, leaving the women to fill the void in the factories and the shipyards.
All the day long, when the rain must shine, she's a part of the assembly line.
We can do it. We can do it becomes a rallying cry for the girls known collectively as Rosie the Riveter. Rosie is a cultural icon representing the women who went to work in the factories, building ships, airplanes, munitions, and other war supplies. We can do it. And they did. D-Day on June 6, 1944 was the largest amphibious landing ever conducted and was the beginning of the push to reclaim Europe from the Axis forces. President Roosevelt dies in office in April of 1945, leaving Harry Truman to to wrap up the war. And he does. VE Day, victory in Europe, is April 12, 1945. VJ Day, victory over Japan, is September, but only after the U.S. dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima and 3 days later on Nagasaki. As horrific as that might have been, it probably saved over 1 million lives. Well, the war is over, but a Cold War between the U.S. and Soviet Union begins. The Nuremberg war trials are held in 1948, NATO is formed in 1949, and Germany is divided in East and West. In June 1950, North Korea invades South Korea. And again, we commit our armed forces to fight on a foreign soil. This time we're spearheading a United Nations coalition. This people's action, or police action, lasts until 1953 and it ends in a stalemate. And of course, we're still in that stalemate. Thank you, son. Thank you, son. After the war, life is good. The veterans are going back to school on the GI Bill. They're getting married, building houses, building homes, and building families. Alaska and Hawaii become the 49th and 50th state in 1959. And we elect a Catholic president in 1961, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, JFK.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
President Kennedy faces down Khrushchev in the Cuban Missile Crisis. He starts sending advisors to a place we've never heard of, Vietnam. And he has a beautiful wife that sets the fashion trend and is adored by most American women around the world and around the world. Then, on November the 22nd, 1963, our world is shattered by the news that President Kennedy has been shot in Dallas, Texas. We anxiously wait for the radio and television for any news from Dallas.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
Our worst fears are confirmed. Our American Camelot is gone forever, and we're left with the image of a brave, courageous widow who must find a way to carry on and raise 2 young children. And she does find a way, and does it very well. Jacqueline Kennedy remains the most glamorized and most photographed First Lady in our history. I'd like to ask the parents of these young players if they would stand and receive appreciation for themselves and for our young thespians.